You know, it's funny. We don't often think about it, but the law is kind of like the invisible operating system that's running our entire society. It's the background code that dictates pretty much everything from how you buy your morning coffee to how you own your house. The whole point is for it to be stable, predictable, and, fair.
So what happens when that OS starts to feel, well, buggy, outdated, or just plain broken? Do you try to fix it from the inside, like a software developer writing a patch? Or do you decide the whole thing is a virus and just try to unplug from the machine completely? This is where things get really interesting, because two very different paths emerge. Let's dig in.
Okay, so if we're talking about legal operating systems, you got to know there are a few major versions out there. The big ones are civil law, which is kind of like a detailed instruction manual, and then there's common law, and that's the one that countries like Australia, the US, and Canada are running. To really get a grip on how you might change the law, you first have to understand how this specific system works.
All right, so first things first, let's pop the hood and see what we're working with. What exactly is this common law system anyway?
Right, so sticking with our operating system analogy, common law is a pretty unique piece of software. And what makes it so unique is that it gets its updates from two totally different sources at the same time.
And this is the absolute key takeaway. In a common law system, the law isn't just some big book of rules that politicians write down. Nope. It's more like a living, breathing thing, because it's also shaped by the decisions that real judges make in real court cases.
This setup creates a really cool dynamic, right? On one side, you've got legislation. Think of these as the big official software updates pushed out by Parliament. They're proactive, trying to fix big problems across the board. But then you have case law, or precedent. This is more like constant small-scale patching. A judge solves one specific problem, and that solution becomes a little piece of code that the next judge has to use. It just builds up, one case at a time.
Okay, but with all these different courts and judges making decisions, how do you stop the whole thing from turning into total chaos? Well, it all boils down to one word: hierarchy. See, decisions from the top courts, like the High Court in Australia, are binding. They set a precedent, and every single court below them has to follow that ruling. It's the glue that holds the whole system together and makes sure the law is predictable.
But let's be real. No operating system is perfect, right? Bugs pop up, the world changes, and that code just gets old. It needs an update. And that brings us to our first type of person, the reformer. This is the individual who sees the bugs and decides to fix the code from the inside.
And this quote from Lord Gardner just nails the problem they used to have. For literally centuries, nobody's actual job was to sit back and check if the law was even working well. Can you believe that? Everyone was just so busy using the system, no one was tasked with maintaining it.
So that's where this whole idea of formal law reform comes from. And this is important. We're not just talking about politicians making new laws to score points. No, this is a dedicated, super methodical process, and it's often non-political. Its only goal is to make the law itself better.
To get this done, a lot of places set up what are called law reform commissions. And honestly, the best way to think of them is as the system's dedicated software developers. They've got the expertise, this is their only job, they stick around so they know what they're doing, and this is the most important part, they're independent. They're not political, so their recommendations are all about what actually works, not what's popular.
And the way they do it is super structured. First, a problem gets flagged. Then a draft law, a bill, is written up, but only after tons of research and talking to people. Then it goes to Parliament to be debated, and if it gets through all that, it becomes the new law. Yeah, it's slow and it's deliberate, but that's the point. You want to be careful when you're patching the system.
Okay, but what if you don't see those bugs as just bugs? What if you look at the whole system and think, this isn't a buggy OS, this is malware. This was designed to control me.
Now that thought process takes us down a totally different path, the path of the rejecter. And to understand this mindset, we're going to look at what's known as the sovereign citizen movement. So, what is the sovereign citizen movement? Well, it's not one single group, but more of a loose collection of people who all share one central belief. The legal system we all live under, it's a complete fraud. They believe they are sovereign individuals, which in their view means they don't have to follow any laws or pay any taxes unless they personally, explicitly agree to it. Their entire worldview is based on a collection of ideas that legal experts call pseudo-legal. Things like, the government isn't a government, it's a secret bankrupt corporation. Or that when you're born, the government creates a legal straw man version of you, and that's who they try to control. They believe that if you just use the right magic words or file the right strange documents, you can opt out of things like needing a driver's license. As you can probably guess, this does not end well. It almost always leads to fines, arrests, and a whole lot of legal trouble.
So there you have it. One system, but two completely, radically different responses to the feeling that something is broken.
And when you put them side by side, the difference is just wow. The reformer's goal is to improve the existing law. The rejector's goal, to declare the whole thing illegitimate. The reformer uses research and public consultation. The rejector uses bizarre documents and refuses to comply. For the reformer, the state is a real thing that can be made better. For the rejector, it's a fake corporation you should just ignore. It really is the official software developer versus the user who's convinced the entire operating system is a virus.
You know, the really wild thing is that both of these groups often start from the exact same place. They both look at the system and feel deep down that something is wrong, that it's unfair or broken. But from that one shared starting point, they end up in completely different universes.
At the end of the day, any legal system, any law, only works because we, the people, agree to follow it. So in our world, which is full of complicated and, let's be honest, sometimes really frustrating rules, it leaves us with a huge question. When you run into a law that you think is just plain wrong, where do you draw that line? When do you try to fix it, and when do you just reject it?